We have lots to discuss here in today's video, including taking a look at an article from McTavish Sports looking at some trade options for the Montreal Canadiens to fill their number 2 center positions. Of course, we know Kirby Dach might be an option. He could also be a trade option for them as well. We'll take a look at the names mentioned in this article, give our thoughts and opinions on what makes the most sense here in this scenario. Plus, we have some updates on Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers. There are some that believe their contract might be actually getting closer and could be resolved before the season starts. We have another PTO to discuss. The Ducks and Mason McTavish, some interesting comments from Elliotte Friedman on that scenario, plus a Pierre LeBrun article talking with Islanders GM Matthew Darche and his captain's future, Anders Lee. Will he be re-signed? What's the plan with him and other players who could be entering the final years of their contract? That and an update on Evgeny Kuznetsov coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have plenty to discuss here. In today's video, we'll get to the Montreal Canadiens and the article looking at some center trade options for them here in just a moment. First, I want to start the video with Connor McDavid. Obviously, the top player in the world needs a contract extension. It's been a heavy topic amongst the NHL media here for a number of days. Obviously, as the skates for the players picked up, and as after the calendar rolled to September, and of course more media appearances, the discussions really ramped up here in recent days. There's a new report on McDavid saying that it sounds a lot like we know that the Oilers and the McDavid have only recently really started having some discussions, but we don't know that anything has gotten too formal here as of yet. And McDavid's still really kind of uncertain exactly what he wants to do, but he's never really said he wants to leave Edmonton, or he's really uncertain about that. I think the biggest thing is his concern over what makes the most sense for him to commit to, while being confident that the Oilers will remain a competitive cup-contending team. And it makes the most sense with a lot of the players in the core and this team being a little bit older, that if that's his biggest concern and the ability to win year after year after year, that it's going to be a shorter term. It's going to be anywhere probably from 2 to 4 years. But there is some reports indicating that the Oilers, even though they know that Connor would prefer a shorter term, will basically give him whatever term he wants. At this point, there's not going to be a lot of back and forth on that. What Connor wants, Connor's probably going to get. And the belief is that we're looking at a 4-year, $17 million a year per season. Now, of course, they would go longer. Like I said, if McDavid wanted it, they'll leave that entirely up to him. But ultimately, whatever they settle on as a average annual value will probably determine the term. Now, of course, we know when McDavid's last contract, the one that's coming to a final year here, that there was reports that right at the end of the process that he kind of changed his mind and asked them to make it a little bit less to knock down the average annual value so that the Oilers had more financial flexibility to make the team around him better. He's made it pretty clear that this is not all about him hitting a home run and cashing in as much cash as possibly that he can possibly get. This is about him being paid what he feels is appropriate, but at the same time giving the team as much flexibility to put a winner together as well. Winning is by far his biggest motivation, not money. He's made a ton of money in his career, and he really wants to win. And of course, he still will be paid handsomely no matter what. So that's not the biggest focus for Connor McDavid. But the belief is that the Oilers were looking at around 4 years, $17 million per season, and that at this point he may have gone back and said, maybe he should take less. Like I said before, there was some that thought a big part of his indecision here would be kind of some pressure from the NHLPA, other players. Like they look to the top guys to push the needle as much as they can, because whatever he takes will ultimately impact other players and kind of push things forward for all the top guys. And being the top of the top guys, his contract will have an impact on them. Like the guys like Jack Eichel right now, to some degree, Kirill Kaprizov, are kind of sitting in limbo with their extension talks, probably waiting to see what McDavid does. And that only makes sense because Eichel's going to know that McDavid's contract's going to be more. So he might as well wait and see what it turns out to be so that he can get as close to that as he feels is appropriate. But yeah, it looks like if McDavid wants to go less than $17 million, that maybe he's going to tell him to take less. Maybe comes in closer to $16 million. But instead of going 4 years, that could shorten the term. It could be a 2 or 3 year deal in that, maybe it's 15.5, 16 million. I mean, because he can really command whatever he wants, and they will pay him whatever he wants. But like I said, it's not about just getting the max money here. It's about doing the math and the talking things over and how long makes sense to commit to. And, I think really that both sides are pretty comfortable here. You don't really see much or hear much of anybody on the Edmonton side of things panicking. I think they're pretty confident with the relationship that they'll get it done. And the belief is that there's still a chance that even though there's some reporters convinced he's going into the season without it, and that could happen. I'm not saying it won't, but there's some that believe that it will get done, and that maybe in the last week here that they've made enough progress that things are getting closer. So we'll see. Not giving any guarantees. There's nothing saying for sure anything's going to happen, but there are some reports out there indicating that things are trending in a more positive direction. Now, in the case of Mason McTavish, things really haven't progressed in that sense. In Elliotte Friedman's latest podcast that came out over the past couple of days here, Fried says that he believes there's a pretty good chance that the Ducks will basically almost force McTavish to hold out. That he says that essentially the Ducks' history with Verbeek would likely indicate that they'd be quite comfortable having McTavish hold out, and that based on their past history that it's something that they've shown a willingness to do, that they'll keep guys out until they get what they want, and that's something that they're comfortable with on a contract. So if they don't find a deal that the Ducks themselves are willing to move forward with before the season starts, McTavish very well could be a holdout and could miss time if this is something that they feel they need to do to push to get what they want. Once he starts missing paychecks, he's probably going to be more likely to bend a little bit more towards what they want. The belief is that the Ducks want to do a long-term deal and lock him up for the max term if they could, but the belief is that there's been some frustration on his side, some concerns over his role, and that he would prefer maybe something shorter term. So we'll see. Obviously, like I said, with the roster and how it's evolved there in Anaheim, I think from what we've heard, it seems like the Ducks do still have him as being a big part of the core and having a big role. But based on how everything has gone in Anaheim the past couple of years, I think there's some skepticism on McTavish's side as to what his role is going to be, how he's going to be utilized and all that. So if he doesn't get maybe he wants a shorter-term deal to have more flexibility. At least that's kind of my take on with what we've heard on all the rumors. But we'll see. But according to Friedman, don't be shocked if McTavish ends up holding out, unless they, that if Anaheim doesn't get him to where they want him, that they'll kind of make that happen. Essentially, Kevin Lebanc, of course, longtime NHL player, still remains unsigned, but he has lined up a PTO. Kevin Lebanc will be going to training camp with the Carolina Hurricanes on a tryout offer. So we'll see if that materializes here into anything. Evgeny Kuznetsov, another name to watch here in the free agent market. His agent recently spoke with Sammy Silber of the Hockey News and basically says that his agent is closing in on a decision that they're hoping to have it made here soon before training camp starts. Apparently there are two teams in the mix that appear willing to sign Kuznetsov, but they're both working through resolving some financial or cap issues. So we don't know who they are, of course. There was some reports earlier in the offseason that the team he last played for in the NHL, who was also the Carolina Hurricanes, who just brought Lebanc in on a PTO, may have some interest, but we don't know who else out there might be. And we know that there was also a report saying that it was pretty unlikely that he returned to the Capitals where he spent the bulk of his career, but that's really all we've heard. But according to his agent, two teams are, I think, willing to do business, and if they can sort their cap situation out, then he should get a contract. So I guess we'll see. If we see some cost-cutting moves here in the coming days before training camp, then he could be one of the players that benefits from that. Now, of course, when it comes to another team, the New York Islanders, of course, they got a new GM this year, Matthew Darche, picked first overall to 25 NHL draft, got their hands on Matthew Schaefer, who's going to be a heck of a player, big-time defenseman for them. They traded Noah Dobson as well, who was a restricted free agent, needed a new deal. And he also made comments to LeBron indicating that he did have a preference to retain Dobson, but it was really boiled down to the contract and what the player was looking for, and it just, I guess they couldn't really make it work and make sense for both sides. But ultimately, the other name mentioned here that fans are probably wondering about is Captain Anders Lee. So Matthew Darche indicates that they have a plan with Lee and that there is currently no plan to pursue a contract extension during the season or before. He essentially says that, he's new to his role and he doesn't really want to get into any big extensions with players that are near the end of their contracts. Essentially, he wants time to kind of evaluate where the team is at. So they have an agreement. He says he's developed what he feels is a pretty good relationship with Anders so far since he's been GM, and the opportunity, he said, to talk with him and spend with him, and that they have an agreement in place that they're going to wait, see how the season goes before they look at a new contract. So it's possible that either towards the end of the season or in the early part of the offseason before July 1, maybe if things work out and they think it's good to continue the relationship, that maybe they'll do a contract for a short term then. But we know that this Islanders team is a team that's older, and they need to turn the roster over some. And obviously, like he says, he acknowledges in this interview with Pierre LeBrun that Anders Lee's been a very important player for the team. He's been the team captain, influential player, good character on and off the ice. So he acknowledges his importance and doesn't take it lightly, but wants to make sure that they take some time to kind of evaluate where the team is at. The player himself is on board with this, and they'll decide, like I said, at the end of the year. But anybody else that's also near that predicament probably wouldn't expect an extension. One of the names that comes to mind here to me would be like Jean-Gabriel Pageau. There's been tons of rumors about trade for him in the last year, even two, really. Of course, with a new GM in town, we don't know how he feels about that player. Maybe things will change. But again, being a team that's been kind of stuck in mediocrity for an extended time during the last few years of the Lamoriello administration there, this is definitely a team, like I said, they need some veteran players. They need, obviously, a mix, but they need to turn the roster over and to get more youth and more skill in there. So clearly, guys like Lee, Pageau that are getting up there, it might not make sense to bring them back, right? So we will see where things go on that front, but don't expect contract extensions for guys that are expiring. And your captain, Anders Lee, if you're an Islanders fan, that'll be reevaluated at the end of the season. And to be honest, I think it's a wise move. That way you're not getting into something that you later regret. You have plenty of time from the time that the calendar ends in the regular season to July 1 to sort out some of those decisions and negotiate. And if you feel that a player is important enough and you want to make sure you get it done, then be aggressive in negotiating and get it done. And if not, then the player has the opportunity to go into free agency and decide their next move from there. So we'll see. Now, of course, as I mentioned, one of the main topics in today's video will be an article put out by TVA Sports looking at some number 2 center options for the Montreal Canadiens now that they've had some newfound cap space after the Carey Price contract trade to the San Jose Sharks here in the past couple of days. Clearly, that move was necessary. I talked about it a number of times leading up to the move happening. Of course, we had first got the speculation around that being done probably back, I want to say, near maybe late July, saying that the way the contract was structured, there was a bonus due on September 1, and that there was a good chance that they would move the contract afterwards. It was going to be very little money owing on the deal. It would make sense. A team that's near the bottom of the standings, like the Sharks, Blackhawks, Penguins, that were going to be, probably maybe having a bit of a struggle throughout the year to remain at the cap floor, given that they had a bunch of players that they were likely to trade, that it would be beneficial for them, beneficial for Montreal to get out of long-term injury reserve, be in a better cap situation. They could add another player if they wanted. They can accrue cap space throughout the season. Just made too much sense not to do it, as long as the price wasn't too crazy high. And really, they got away with a pretty good deal here. Like I said, they had to take a contract back. They took a prospect who's been, I think, mostly an East Coast hockey leaguer. So probably a player that will not trending towards being an NHLer right now, that they're not really having to commit to for very long, but they will for the coming year. So there's that, which is really minor. So they take that back, and they had to give up a 5th rounder. Like, the price really isn't bad. So obviously they negotiated in good faith here, saying that, from San Jose's perspective, you have a good reason to do this too. So like, don't use extortion here to kind of get the deal out of the Canadiens. So obviously, like I said, with that newfound space, this new article suggests 5 names. The first one being free agent Jack Roslovic, that they don't have to give up any assets. Roslovic has been productive enough that you could at least consider him for this role, but would he really be an upgrade on Kirby Dach? It's difficult to say. I mentioned before the possibility of Roslovic maybe being a name to watch here, given the fact that there is some history with him and Laine from their days with the Jets, but at the same time, and then I think they crossed paths in Columbus for a little bit too. However, they really, I don't think Sun spent a lot of time on a line together, but they definitely know each other, but that's not enough to make a move. If they had chemistry and you've seen them play together enough before, then maybe it happens. But either way, Roslovic is a talented player. Is he good enough for that role? I don't know. But he's an option to consider. You could sign him short term as insurance in case Dach doesn't work out, or in case Dach's injury takes too long. We don't know if he's ready to start the year or whatnot. It could just create a little bit more depth in insurance. You don't have to commit for more than a year. Maybe at this point, considering he's gone the entire offseason unsigned. I know he probably has teams looking at him that are trying to free up space and whatnot, but at this point, he's in danger of missing training camp. So I'm not sure what's going to happen with Roslovic, but if a team like Montreal, who now has space, could sign him, you think maybe that would be something they would look at. Another option is New Jersey Devils, younger forward Dawson Mercer. Mercer's a name that's been in and out of the rumor mill for New Jersey as well. Often looked at as a number 3 center for the Devils, with Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier playing ahead of him. There have been times where he's moved up to play the wing in the top 6 as well. And I think at times New Jersey has kind of been a little conflicted on where he fits the best as well. A little bit of inconsistencies with his game, but he doesn't make a ton of money. He's still young. He's still a player that's up and coming and still has a lot of potential. So clearly, it could be an option. I don't know what the asking price would be. And the article suggests that maybe even moving Dach for him, as in, a project for a project, if you will. But we don't know right now if New Jersey would have any interest in Dach. We don't know the status of his health. Until the teams know the status of his health, I don't think they're going to trade for him, so that's going to be trickier to do. It also mentions Jared McCann of the Seattle Kraken, a year left at $5 million. He would be a good option, to be honest. I think he might be one of the better options here, but Seattle has told some teams that they don't want to move him. There were teams that believed he was available, but I think it was New Jersey, if I'm not mistaken, that had inquired with the Kraken to see about a trade, and they were told, we don't want to move him. So, again, good player, decent contract, skill set works. I don't know that they're going to want to move him, though, and then that may not even be an option. Another one, Ryan O'Reilly in Nashville. Now, O'Reilly didn't get trade protection built into his contract, but the Predators told him even last year when they were bottoming him out that they had a lot of respect for him and being a veteran, that they would not move him. Even though he didn't have the protection, Barry Trotz kind of said, I'll only trade you if you want me to. So, they kind of almost told him, you don't have a no-move clause, but we're going to kind of treat this like you do, and we'll come to you with anything before we pull the trigger. There was belief that there was interest for him to go back to the Leafs, and he didn't want to. So he ended up staying with Nashville. He signed for 2 years at $4.5 million remaining on his contract. Great two-way centerman, be a great veteran to go with all those youngsters. He would be a phenomenal option. But I don't know that he has any desire to leave Nashville. And even though he doesn't have that protection to prevent it from happening, we also, like I said, based on history, I think the Predator, would probably not do it if he didn't want to, and I have no clue that he would want to. We don't have any reason to think he wants to leave. So again, on paper, great option. And they'd be smart to look into that. I just don't know that he would want to do it. Another good option could be Nick Schmaltz out of Utah. 1 year left at $5.85. He's been a productive player. Now, we also don't know how Utah plans to tackle this either, because Utah is a team that's been improving. They're also a team that will have a decision to make with a player like Schmaltz. Their depth has improved a ton in the last few years, and there's probably going to be a few players that do end up leaving just because of that depth being so deep that you want to maybe get away from some players and go on to guys making less money that can elevate and whatnot. Just an elevation or evolution of a team. Natural. But Schmaltz, like I said, with Logan Cooley being there, he's definitely the long-term number one center. You get Jack McBain just re-signed. He's more of ideally a 3. But then you get Barrett Hayton is still in the in the center role there too. To me, McBain and Hayton are more like number 3 guys. I mean, if they feel confident enough, one can elevate their game to be a 2, then maybe they feel Schmaltz is expendable and they can bring in another asset. I don't know. But again, he'd be a great option too. Don't know that he's available because we don't know what Utah's plans are. They very well might prefer to extend him if they can. He's been with that franchise for an extended time, dating way back to the early, was in Arizona for a number of years on a long-term deal. I think he was started with Chicago, ended up in Arizona, and then from Arizona went with the team, of course, to Utah. So, in all honesty, I think good option. Just again, unsure of availability. So let me know what you think for the Montreal Canadiens out of these options. What would you do? Should you sign Roslovic? Do you trade for Mercer? Do you trade for Schmaltz, O'Reilly, McCann? What's the asking price going to be? Could you include Doc if you do make those trades? Or are you trying to rely more so on your picks and prospects and more of a futures-based trade? Because different teams here are in different spots. Most of these players, I think you'd have to include at least one roster player because they're not teams that are in a spot that are trying to be bad. Like Utah would be wanting a player back because they're trying to contend right now. They're trying to get into the playoffs. Nashville, they're trying to bounce back, right? So they're not going to want to be significantly worse. Seattle's a different story, but the belief is with what they've done that they're trying to make a push forward as well. The Devils are trying to contend. So I don't know that you could get away with any of those trades without giving up at least one player off your roster that can help the other team right away. So that's kind of tricky to do, but let me know your thoughts on what the best options would be. If it were me, to be honest, I really like the idea of Schmaltz or O'Reilly. I'm just not sure that they can pull off those trades. But signing Roslovic if he would take a 1-year deal especially, is a good option as well. You don't give up anything but cap space. It's some insurance in case Doc doesn't work out. And if Doc is working out, you can give them an opportunity. You can either play Roslovic on the wing. Maybe if there's any injuries, he can fill in at center in another line. It gives you a lot more versatility and depth. And you're not giving up a significant piece off your roster. So to me, I don't know if Roslovic was signed there. But if you would think at this point that Roslovic would probably take a decent guaranteed contract just about anywhere to make sure he's got a good income for the coming season. But I don't know what he's waiting on either or what other teams have told him. So let me know your thoughts on all these potential options and plus everything else to discuss in today's video in the comments. We will discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.